Welcome back to another episode of the Lil Dudes Insect Academy podcast. I'm so excited to be here in Washington, D.C. At the ESA conference. I'm so excited to be here with my friend Jacqueline. So we're going to just talk about what she's been doing. So welcome to the show, Jacqueline.
Thanks so much for having me. So my name's Jacqueline Staab, and I study bumblebee nesting.
Okay.
And what I do is really unique because I use conservation detection dogs to find those nests.
Wow. That's so interesting. Yeah, we're going to go back to that in a minute.
Definitely.
Where did you start your career in entomology? Where did you go to school, and what was that like?
Yeah, so I grew up on the coast of North Carolina, which wasn't really bug or farm oriented.
Mm-hmm.
But I got into agriculture through my local FFA.
Yeah.
And so through that, I had a sustainable farm eventually. I had about a 1/4 acre where I got honeybees, and
Wow.
that's how I got interested in bees.
That's awesome.
So yeah, through that, I got my beekeeping certification. Then I found myself at Appalachian State University.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, that is so cool. Appalachian State. Where did you go from there, or is that what you did?
Yeah, so I got my degree in ecology, environmental, and evolutionary biology at Appalachian State, and I'm almost done with their evolutionary ecology master's program.
Okay.
But in the midst of all that, I started Darwin's Bee Dogs.
Okay.
And we find endangered bumblebee nests for conservation research, and we work with a bunch of different people in a bunch of different groups.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting. So, tell us a little bit more about what this what these dogs, what this means, and what. How did you come up with this, or is this a new thing, or just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, insects are in decline worldwide.
Yes.
Bumblebees especially. So the IUCN found that about 28% of bumblebees are in decline right now.
Wow.
Yeah, and pollination and floral resources are a very important part of the puzzle, and most of the research thus far has been focused on floral resources. But the other part of that puzzle is nesting and where they're nesting.
Right.
So we need to find out where they're nesting, and that's where the dogs came in. So at the Guide Lab at Appalachian State University, we wanted to know where the bumblebees were nesting, and I came across a paper, Waters 2011,
Okay.
where the Department of Defense in Great Britain trained a dog to find bumblebee nests. So they had great success with that program, but it kind of like faded away, it seemed like. So I decided in 2018 that I was going to try it myself overseas here. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So how did you begin working with that? Like, how do you train these dogs? Is it just like a sniffing dog at the airport, or like what is it? Or the truffle hunting dogs, like, is it similar to either of those, or is it, what's the process with getting one of these dogs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with detection dogs, like the first thing you need is a really drivey dog. So you want that dog to be really crazy about a ball or something, or food, something that it will look all day for. Exactly. And then we basically, so with any detection dogs, there's 2 phases for training. There's imprinting, where you teach a dog that a scent is associated with reward. And then there's behavior shaping, where you teach the dog to hunt and indicate at the target scent.
Right.
So with all detection dogs, that's the way you do it. But with depending on like who's training, what they're training for, what exactly they're looking for, it will depend like differently there. And that's mostly in the behavior shaping part. So to imprint my dogs, we take a PVC pipe and we fill it with bumblebee wax and feces, and we play fetch with them, and you get about 75 hours of contact time between the PVC pipe and their mouth, and so they're associating that scent with toys and play. And they get really excited and they love it. And so the next step is we put the bumblebee nesting material in a wooden box with like a small hole in the top, so they can't really see what's in there. But they'll naturally show interest because they think their toy's in there because they smell it.
Right.
So as soon as they show interest, you take a ball popper, which is like a little ball cannon, and you shoot the ball out of the top, and they freak out, and they're so excited. Then they're like, oh, this is the best fun game ever. So then they're just super pumped to start searching, and that's how you do it.
Wow, that is crazy. So, do you have these dogs at your house personally? Like, how many do you have, and are they your companies, or how does that work? Are they part of your family? Like, how does all of that work out?
Yeah, so I'm like just starting Darwin's Bee Dogs, and so right now it's just me. So I have two conservation detection dogs at my house right now, Jane Goodall and Gertie Corey.
Nice.
And the first one I had was Darwin, after Charles Darwin, and he was actually America's first conservation detection dog to specialize in finding bumblebee nests.
Really?
Yeah, but they're used for all different applications now. In New Zealand, they're using them to find alpine stoneflies, all different things. I believe this started by Ellis in the 60s, was the first time it was used to find insects, and they used it to find gypsy moth egg sacs.
Wow. That's fascinating. Yeah, so it's basically just a specific scent, because bumblebee would have a specific scent as opposed to like honeybee nest.
Absolutely.
So they don't get distracted by honeybee nests either?
No, I actually have honeybees in my backyard, and my dogs don't bother them at all.
That's crazy that it's that distinct.
Definitely.
That's fascinating. Okay, so the dog finds the nest.
Yes.
What are you doing with it?
So it depends on like who I'm partnering with.
Yeah.
So for my research, I take like habitat data, humidity data, how far it is from a linear feature, just stuff like that. That'll help us like fill in max scent so we can figure out the optimal range or where they're moving and stuff like that. I also partnered with the University of Missouri on a project where they got a grant from National Geographic to put mics outside of wild bumblebee nests, and they were able to tell what bee was flying based on the frequency of the vibration of the wings, so they could tell if it was a queen, a worker, a drone.
Oh, wow.
And so we would go out, find the nest, and put mics by the entrances. So we offer our services to whoever. We're about to start a project with Texas Parks and Wildlife. We're in the beginning stages of that, where we're going to be looking for the variable cuckoo bumblebee. I don't know if you've heard much about that, but they might be extinct. We're not really sure. The last one was seen in Texas about 3 to 4 years ago, but we have until 2026, 2027, I believe, before they recheck everything and survey again to see if they... Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so... possibly looking for a possibly extinct species. That's interesting. So, so they would find every bumblebee nest like in an area, but they can't differentiate between like genus or species, right? They couldn't sniff out specifically the endangered one, right? Or am I?
Right. I mean, that's absolutely correct, because it is a cuckoo bumblebee. It actually is very closely associated with the American bumblebee, Bombus pennsylvanicus, and they're like really closely related. They mostly predate Bombus pennsylvanicus nests, and since they're in decline, so is the cuckoo bee. So that adds another level of complexity.
Yeah,
if you will.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because the cuckoo is extra hard to find, because once they go and kill the queen of the nest they're invading, they get the workers that are already there to start raising their young and their brood. So they basically stay in the nest a lot after that. So you're not going to find them like foraging really or anything like that. So dogs are pretty much the best bet in finding them, which is really cool.
Yeah. And the nests of both of those smell the same.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
And so little is known about bumblebee nesting all over the world. I mean, it's coming up at this conference over and over again in talks about not being able to find the specific bumblebee nests, like the exact location. Because if you think about it, you can only tell bumblebee nest or the population size of bumblebees based on how many nests there are, because they go down, their whole population goes down to just those new queens every year, and they start the new nests. So a lot of population surveys are done by like collecting bees, foraging and stuff like that, but the only like really sure way to know is to know how many nests are in a landscape.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about other ways that this could be used, because like in Washington State, one of the big topics in the last few years with ecologists in the area and with the Fish and Wildlife is the murder hornet or the Asian giant hornet. And so they nest in the ground as well. So I'm wondering, and they have trouble finding them because they're in the ground.
Yeah.
And they're rare because there's only been a few found. But they need to not be there. Like, it's important that we find them, right?
Absolutely.
And so one thing that they've been doing is the nest temperature in the ground is higher than that of the ground temperature in Washington, right? So what they've been doing is they've been using thermal cameras, but they said that's not very reliable in the summer because when they're the most active, because the ground is warmer also. So it, like, the camera doesn't pick it up as well.
Yeah, and I think
So
it
I'm
also
wondering-
depends on, like, the depth of the nest, because I had
Yes.
issues with that with a thermo camera as well.
Yeah, because I'm sure bumblebees are the same way. It's also warmer, I'm sure. But I'm wondering if maybe the dogs could possibly be trained somehow to find something like that. That
I'm
could be
honestly
very
sure they
interesting.
could. So in addition to conservation detection dogs also do things like find invasive plants. So that scientists can get rid of those. Like invasive knapweed, it's been used for that, and all kinds of stuff. They have dogs that go on the bows of boats that find whale scat. And they'll go on the bow and point their nose in the direction for the captain to go, and they'll go and collect those species for data. So I specifically just work on pollinators and bees. But there are other detection dogs across the United States, like Conservation Dogs Collective, Canine Conservationists, Working Dogs for Conservation, that also, they do more varied, so they'll look for all kinds of different things.
Wow, that is super interesting. I'm just thinking about all the implications that this could have. Like, because if their noses are that sensitive, there's all kinds of things they could find.
Yeah,
right?
and
super interesting.
We worked really closely with a local training place called Highland Canine. They're a national dog training, and they mostly specialize in police dogs and service dogs and stuff like that. So when I went and asked them if they could help me train a bumblebee detection dog, they were like, sure, yeah. So we all just kind of like figured it out together. But they also are really interested in getting to do other projects as well.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they're just sniffing out some, like, it's not that bizarre. Like, if you just think about it, how amazing their noses are and how good they are at doing that. That could be, I'm just thinking about all the
There's
ways
so
this
many
could be
applications.
used.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And like since the 90s, I think it really, because conservation detection dogs were primarily used for birds mostly. Like they started in New Zealand looking for a cockapoo, I believe, parrot, an endangered one. But since then, it's just grown and grown into so many different things. And I'm really excited to be able to bring that to the bee world.
Yeah, that is super interesting. Wow. Well, so where did you originally, let's go back, and where did you originally get interested in entomology in general, and when did that kind of click for you?
Yeah, so I've always been like an outside kid, playing with bugs, playing in the dirt, camping, coming back dirty, So I've always just like focused on like those little things and noticed those like little creepy crawlies crawling around.
Right.
Yeah, so I just have always been fascinated by them. And bees especially, once I started learning more about them, they're just so fascinating and so cool. And it's just like, I just can't get enough.
Yeah, and the ways that they communicate and all of that.
It's just so cool.
Yeah, that's same with me for sure. So moving on, like who do you kind of look up to in the world of science or just life in general? Maybe someone in history or someone maybe a mentor or something. Like who's your inspiration?
Honestly, I get a lot of inspiration from conferences like this, just seeing other, especially like women in STEM, like other girls like out here showing up, kicking butt, taking names in their field. The president of the Entomology Society right now and the next one are both female. Like, that's awesome. Like, there are so many females really paving the way. And it's just so inspiring. Even like people in my coworkers, like, I just find inspiration everywhere, and we're facing such a big problem. Like, it's so cool that everybody is like kind of working together to figure it out.
Yeah, that is very cool. Yeah. So, what are some? You mentioned beekeeping earlier.
Yeah.
But what are some other hobbies that you enjoy in your spare time? Like.
Yeah, I really like to fish and fly fish. Fish in the coastal waters.
Nice.
I I really like to run and hike and do all that stuff. Obviously, play with my dogs.
Nice.
So you were asking about them earlier. They live in my house with me.
Yeah.
They sleep in my bed at night.
Nice.
They're working dogs, but they're kind of like pet working dogs at the same time.
Yeah.
So they
That's
do
really
like to
awesome.
sleep in. I do have to get them up sometimes.
Yeah. What kind of dogs are they?
So they are German short-haired pointers, which are traditionally bird dogs, but I have trained them to find bumblebees. And that's kind of hard because if you think about it, like evolutionarily, their main drive is always going to be birds. So we had to be like really creative with finding ways to,
Right.
so they don't just take off after a hawk when they're supposed to be looking for bees, you know? So we have to be like really creative and stuff when we're doing stuff like that.
Yeah, the breed definitely matters. I did not think about that.
Oh, it definitely does. Like, and for as far as noses go, so I have some interesting dog facts for you.
Yeah.
So people have about 5 million scent receptors. Dogs have on average 125 million.
Oh my god.
And like working dogs with like good noses usually have like 200 million, and German short-haired pointers do fall into that category.
Wow.
And what I've learned through working with dogs is 2/3 of their brain is controlled by their olfactory. So their nose controls 2/3 of their brain. So if they smell something, they're going. They can move their nostrils individually. They can break down compound odors. So if a dog walks into this room right now, we're just like, oh, we like smell the room. We might pick up like one particular scent. A dog can be like, okay, there's water here. There's this bug here. There's this bug here. There's this deodorant. This person's here. You know, they can break down complex odors into individual components, which is so cool.
Yeah. That is crazy to think about. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think our brains could handle it.
No.
Yeah.
Especially with everything else going on.
Yeah. So, yeah, awesome. So fishing, hiking. Yeah, anything else that we missed?
People usually ask if they get stung. And I was going to bring this up when you were mentioning the murder hornets earlier.
Yes.
So when I was talking to you earlier about behavior shaping, that's where the detection methods vary between dogs and what you're looking for. So with like a detection dog that's going to find a drug or something, you want them to go to exactly the source of the odor and point at it, because you don't want to have to like look through the whole car to find it.
Right.
You want the dog to show you exactly where it is.
Yeah.
With bumblebees, you want the dog to show you where it is, but also not get stung or trample the ground.
The hole or the entrance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my dogs are trained to indicate about 4 meters away, so they don't do any of that. And through repetition, so a lot of other conservation detection dogs will find multiple scents and kind of switch target scents, but my dogs specifically just do bees. Right. And so they are able to really work exactly where bees might be. Like, we will look in different areas, but we know through experience like where bees are more likely to be, and they know that too. So you'll see them like really focusing on like linear features and stuff, and edge rows, stuff like that, where you're more likely to find bees.
Right.
Yeah, so that's really cool.
Wow. Yeah. So they know that, on the side of a hill there could be nests too.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super interesting. And so they kind of point their noses in the direction, and then you kind of look around to see if there's any bees coming in and out.
Absolutely.
And you can kind of find it from there.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Wow, that is super crazy. I never even thought about this.
It's crazy.
It's
so
awesome.
fun.
Yeah.
And then you have to think about like how the air is moving, the humidity,
Right.
temperature, wind direction, all the things too.
Yeah, because that affects the scent or what?
Yeah, it affects the scent and how your dogs are going to pick up that scent. So you do need to like work your search strategy around your target and what you're looking for and the landscape.
Right. Yeah. So, what are you thinking of? What are your dreams for the future? Like, any trips that you want to go on? Where do you see this bee thing going? Like, what are your big goals for the future?
So when I was starting my master's research into bumblebee nesting, I saw this map of like known bumblebee nesting, and it was blank, like basically blank. It's really sad. And so I was really inspired because I really care about people and the environment, and bumblebees are keystone pollinators. So without them, like our ecosystem is not going to do well at all. And so just knowing that and knowing how important this information is to their conservation, it really inspired me to just like fill in that map. So I really want to build up my company, Darwin's Bee Dogs, to be an international brand. And so we'll work internationally and help people all over find and fill in their maps and teach them how to train bumblebee dogs and do like kind of like a grassroots effort and save the bumblebees is my goal.
That is so awesome. Yeah. So a big mission here.
Lofty.
But just as simple as a dog.
Yeah.
But big implications. That is so cool. That is so awesome to hear. Yeah. So lastly, before we finish off here, where can the viewers go to learn more about you and Darwin's Bee Dogs and social media, maybe website? Like, where can they go to learn more about it?
Yeah, so if you Google Darwin's Bee Dogs, we've been on a few media publications. We've been on like Fox News and a few like CNN, NBC. There's a few articles in like U.S. News and World Report, stuff like that. Yeah, and in addition to that, we do have a website, but it's in progress. So hopefully by the time this airs, it'll be ready to go. DarwinsBeeDogs.com. Nice. And then we're also on like social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Darwin's Bee Dogs.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was so crazy.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun.
Yeah, this was so fun. You did really awesome.
Thank you.
Super fun. So great to meet you.
Great to meet you too.